Chapter 14, we want to talk, just to finish up the retirement planning component of this course. I want to talk about some basic strategies and concepts with retirement planning itself. Again, obviously, retirement is a huge issue for many people. Lots of people don't plan appropriately or soon enough. But essentially, this is how retirement has sort of worked its way forward. Historically, we've relied on what they refer to as a three-legged stool: Social Security, private pensions, corporate pensions, and personal savings. Now, obviously, with a three-legged stool, any one of those pieces that falls through the cracks, and retirement planning is now a big issue. So what's going to threaten that stool? Quite frankly, people are living longer, right? So the private pensions and the personal savings won't last long enough. They're talking about the reduction and restructuring Social Security. And of course, especially with defined benefit plans, you have to worry about the viability of those corporate plans when companies need to change and or companies go out of existence. So we have to be willing to, we have to understand that if you're going to retire and you want to live the way you want to live in retirement, you have to take responsibility. You're the ones, through personal savings, you're the one that's going to make sure that that happens or it doesn't happen. So we have to identify our goals, right? We need to measure our ability to meet those goals. Are they even at all realistic? Then obviously we need to figure out, obviously, that the success is that we're going to be able to retire at our desired retirement age at the expected level of income that we want. And of course, that's the piece that's the moving target, right? We're going to plan and work towards a particular goal, but quite frankly, that goal may change as we get closer to and actually get to retirement. So it is a moving target, but it requires some basic planning to get at least close to the target. How do we analyze a person's expenditures? Right? There's lots of ways we can do this. We could do this with some budgets, right? One approach basically says that we should have somewhere between 60 to 70% of our pre-retirement expenditure level. That's nice. That's easily done, I guess. But certainly multiplying a number by 60 or 70% is one thing. But now we have to worry about, well, what is my pre-retirement income going to be, right? Or is my expenditures going to be 60 or 70%? What are those expenditures going to be once I get to retirement? And quite frankly, I'm not 100% sure what those are going to be. A better approach that's a lot more difficult to do is to figure out what things are fixed and what things are flexible and work our way to calculate what things we may ultimately need. We obviously need to know something about a retirement income, and we have to figure out something to do with the shortfall. How are we going to address those issues? We need to look at some tax-advantaged investment planning, revise some of the things we're currently doing. We need to look at some additional savings planning and possibly reassess where our assets are currently invested so that we can ultimately use those in the future. What if there's a potential surplus? Well, yippee! We did what we were supposed to do. We've overestimated what we've done. But in the end, right, we want to have that little bit of a cushion so when we get to retirement, we can do what it is we want to do at retirement. So what is the needs analysis? How do we work our way through that? We need to know what our projected expenditures are, and then we need to figure out what are our sources of income. In this little pie here, you can see that they have projected a $7,500 shortfall annually, right? Well, what is $7,500 a month? Is a little bit less than a little bit more than $600 a month. So that's a huge shortfall. How are we going to plan for that? So let's first of all think about future income, right? And I think this process is actually a little bit easier. Let's figure out what our income is going to be, and then let's base it on what our current uses are, right? What in the end, the question is, what do I need to invest to get the amount that I think I need, right? And or given my current program, what return do I need to get to achieve my goals? So let's think about this. Let's say that we predict you're going to need 60 to 70% of your gross, whatever that is today. So again, if you're making $60,000 today, then 70% of that is $42,000. We need to estimate our lifespan. Again, very difficult to pinpoint that exactly. We need to know what our returns might be during retirement. Again, certainly less than prior to retirement, but we're not 100% certain. And then, of course, we have to have a goal of when we'd like to retire. You need to assume that your taxes are going to be the same as in retirement as they are now. We talked about this in the last chapter, that since most of your income is going to be coming from tax-deferred income, tax-deferred programs such as 401ks, 403bs, etc., or IRAs, since most of your income will probably come from that, you'll pay taxes on every dollar that you withdraw. That may put you into a taxable situation where you'll have to pay taxes. Probably not as much as they are right now, but you should at least assume that they're going to be the same as now. If it's less, it's less. That's just a benefit. You'll have some a little bit of frosting on the cake, if you will, to make sure that you'll be able to live in retirement the way you want to. If we earn $75,000, again, this is just a time value question. That's your gross. You're age 25. You're going to retire when you're 60. Inflation's 4%. Estimate that you're going to need 75% of your income during retirement. Now, I've been thinking about this, and I think we should all be thinking about this as well, is when do you think you can retire and get full retirement? Right? Let's think about when Social Security kicks in. Right? Once you quit working, right, you don't have any income. You also don't have any health insurance. So you have to have some method of covering health insurance once you retire. Well, currently Medicare doesn't kick in till 65. So 65 for most of us would be the earliest that you could retire. Unless your spouse was younger and your spouse is working, then they could put you on their health coverage possibly, and then get everybody to age 65, and then Medicare would kick in. I have age 60 here. I'm thinking now that that number is just a little bit too young. It should be 65 to kick in everything. Also, to get maximized Social Security income, you have to retire at the date that kicks in. So for most people, I think it's born after 1960, that age is 67. If you retire at 60, let's say you retire it at 62. Well, obviously you have to worry about health care, but now you're only going to get roughly 75% of whatever you would get at retirement. Why is that different? Well, because you're getting benefits for 4 or 5 more years longer than otherwise thought. So it's a bunch of questions that we have to ask about this information that we put into the program. But let's go with our numbers that we have here, right? 75% of 75,000 is 56,250, right? Let's say that inflation is 4%. 35 years is when you're going to retire. You need to have roughly, when you get to retirement, you're going to need $221,000 a year to live in retirement at this 75% level. If you estimate that you're going to live to be 80 years old, inflation's 4% during retirement, and you can earn 8% during retirement, how do we figure this out? Interest on the investments, 8%, 20 years from 60 to 80. Payments, $221 a year, and we expect 4% inflation. So if we don't want to cover inflation, we need $2.1 million. If we want to cover inflation, we need $2.9 million. So again, let's move forward. We're thinking I need $2.9 million. How do I get there? I already have $10,000 in my account. Let's say I'm going to average 10% per year. And currently, I put away $500 a month. So the first question is, how much do I need to put away at this current annual interest rate of 10%? And the answer to that is $688. So that's obviously more than what I'm investing now. So what rate of return do I need to do? Right? What rate of return is necessary to get there? If you plug in this negative $500 here, it tells us that the interest that I would need, you'd need to earn 16.7% on average per year to do exactly what you're doing and get to retirement under this scenario. 16% per year is obviously very high, right? You would like to have that number much lower. We want that number to be closer to 10. Boy, it would be great if it could even be a little bit less than 10, right? The more you plan now, the easier it is to get to retirement the way you want to get there. So again, the overall question is, how much do I need to put in? If I'm not putting in enough, what return do I need to get? Is that return reasonable, and can I expect to do something to get there? So that obviously is the big question. How do I get there? Right?